Any observations or questions? Nothing. 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 Actually, there was a group, a musical group in the 60s, see if anyone here remembers this, called the Fugs. It was a euphemism for what they really wanted to call themselves, but they knew they would get in trouble, so they went with the Fugs. Their leader was Ed Sanders, who was a poet, and they had some connection with some of the Beats. Allen Ginsberg, and Allen Ginsberg appeared on some of their tunes, and they had a song called "Nothing." Monday, nothing. Tuesday, nothing. Wednesday, Thursday, nothing. Is kind of heavy, Russian depression. Friday, nothing. Saturday, nothing. Sunday, also nothing. January, nothing. And then, it went on like that. And they covered, art, literature, everything, the world's great books, a whole bunch of nothing.
How did it end?
Them screaming, nothing, nothing, not a damn thing.
Wow.
I used to play that for my students, actually, and my English students, when we'd read Waiting for Godot, and I was introducing the concept of nihilism. But is that what we're doing here? When you use a word like nihilism and go, everything, it's just all nothing, and the way in when that is said, I think I mentioned last time we'd gone to this brilliant one. Bill Irwin has this brilliant one-man show on Beckett, which is still playing till October 27th at the Kirk Douglas Theater. Really, I really recommend it. It's really wonderful. We'll probably go again. This kind of existentialist deconstruction of, all the things that we thought were so important or rewarding in life turn out to be empty. They turn out to be nothing. And it's usually presented in a way that's very it's a matter of anguish, a matter of disillusionment. There's an interesting word, disillusionment, right? It's always used in a negative sense, like, oh, how terrible. Our illusions were taken away. That sounds good to me. That's what in the Dharma teachings, that's called, losing your illusions, that's called liberation. What's the difference? What's the difference between this anguished, nihilistic, oh no, it's nothing, with nothing?
One is nothing, not creative, it's death. The other one is life-giving, creation.
Yeah, so it's like a dead kind of nothing versus lively nothing.
Creative nothing.
Yeah. Because everything comes out of nothing.
Exactly.
Nothing is the womb of everything. This nothing, this blank, this white screen of awareness gives rise to the whole movie, to all the everything. And even when it doesn't, even when, say, deep in meditation, when we're experiencing not all the display of phenomena, all the movie, but just the screen. Or maybe there's phenomena somewhere up on the surface, somewhere in the background, but we're not much engaged in it. So our primary object of attention, which is not really an object, is we're just swimming in nothing. And I always come back to what Maharishi said about it's just nothing, but there's something very good about it. It's delicious nothing. Like I told you that phrase I learned from my sister, that Dutch phrase, lekker niks. Lekker niks, delicious nothing, yummy nothing. What's the difference? Why is it that when, some of the existentialist writers talk about, and it takes so much courage to face the nothingness and so forth, what's the disconnect there?
It's an existential angst in them.
Yes.
Always.
So why do they have that angst? Why is looking at nothing give them angst when it gives us joy? Why does...
I think of it in a material sense. If you have nothing, you're poor, and we're brought up with that material thing. But then I think, as I went on, what do you have to worry about? And you say nothing, it's like it's taken on a whole different thing. And going through right now is we are getting rid of things that used to mean things, and now to have nothing in that space is a wonderful thing.
Mm-hmm.
Whereas, maybe 10 years ago, accumulating all these things, and having nothing was a bad thing, and now it's turned around to a good thing.
Yeah,
It's just how you
empty, having empty.
perception.
When you clear out all that crap in your garage and you have that empty space.
Yes,
I'll tell you something. When I was little, when I was in grade school, I was super smart. I got A's in every subject. That changed later on. When I hit geometry and physics, it made no sense. I was really in trouble. But early in grade school, I was getting A's in every subject, and the teacher would be bringing up some concept of English or art or geography, I don't know what, and kids would be struggling with it, and I'd be having this just delightful dialogue with the teacher, and I can remember so clearly other kids looking at me like, oh wow, he's got this special superpower, like he's got this thing, something going on inside his skull that we don't have. I can remember it very clearly. And I can remember also being very clearly cognizant of the fact that no, they had it backwards. They had something in their heads that I did not have. What I had was empty space. So it was very easy for me, I could see the concepts right away. What they had was a bunch of, it was almost like I could feel it in their mind. It was like they had a bunch of sawdust and peanut butter in their skulls. You know what I mean? It was like they had all this sludge that the information to get processed had to work its way through the sludge. Is that making sense to you? And to me, it was just, right? So my superpower was nothing. It was emptiness. And what I find now, with some decades of meditation under my belt and of, just sitting marinating in that real nothingness, in that real emptiness, and that open space of awareness, being this spirit, God, nothing, whatever, whichever, any word we use for it's going to be problematic, because any word we use is something. It has some edge to it, some texture. Take away all the edge, all the texture, all the association. That's what we're talking about. So, with a few decades under my belt of marinating in that, more and more finding that, oh yeah, that's what's going on here all the time, as you are all discovering in your own lives. What I find is that living my life, the processing of living, is more and more coming to resemble the way I processed that information when I was a kid in the first grade and the second grade. It's just all happening within that sparkling clarity of empty space, rather than having to, and this in terms of like emotionally, like dealing with other people and situationally dealing with things, events, so forth. It's just more and more, just all more this kind of frictionless flow going through this empty space, rather than coming through all this sludge, emotionally and situationally and so forth. Is this ringing bells for you? You right? I mean, yeah, it's
I like it.
yeah. And it can be a subtle thing, and I think there's some value in giving words to these subtleties of our development. It can, we don't want to get too attached to the words, because all the words, as we say, have texture and are, but sometimes if we can use words with some clarity, they help point out what this thing is like, and then sometimes they can help us to notice it more clearly. Oh yeah, this is going on. This is, yeah. So as far as using this as a way into your practice, if it talks to you, maybe play with it at home. I'm finding it fruitful myself in recent days. And then at home you can, are you there, Spirit, or whatever floats your boat? Are you there, God? God happens to work fine for me as well. I'm very at home with that word, but I know some people are not.
There was just an
but I had, in my case, part of that is because I had no religious training. I had no religious upbringing, so I can come to that word with a minimum of baggage. And some people who've had religious upbringing, that word also is fine with them, and for some it's got just way too much baggage.
For me, it has too much baggage.
Yeah.
Because God was someone who always punished me.
Right.
So it was just like, and there was an interview at NPR this morning, and it was Elton John, and he was talking about how,
I heard that.
you heard that, yeah, and he just said that word God just was a horrible word to him, and then someone explained it to him in different terms, and then he could get it.
Yeah.
He said, as long as you don't use that word. And I hated that word. Anytime someone would bring it up, I just wanted to turn and walk the other way.
Right.
And now I'm like, okay, I get why people use this, but unfortunately it's used a lot in not a good terms. It's in politics, for instance.
Yeah.
And so that's probably part of the
Yeah.
negativeness of it.
I mean, anytime you get religious language, whether it's the God word or, profoundly saddening to me was seeing how, because in general, the especially with the years that I spent in Buddhist training, and I have a feeling of closeness to that tradition, and in general the Buddhists have a pretty good record for not crucifying people and stuff, but now there's some countries in recent years where terrible bigotry has been stirred up by certain Buddhist so-called religious leaders to persecute the non-Buddhist minorities. And so any word, anything can be used in that negative way. But to me it's particularly despicable when the words that are supposed to evoke the highest, the best that's in us, the highest values of transcendence within yourself, of just marinating in that spirit, that nothing, that God, whatever, and then coming out and acting with your actions informed by that, seeing that in others, valuing that, cherishing that in others, and treating them accordingly. There's that beautiful thing in the Gospels when someone challenges Jesus. Remember, Jesus was within the tradition of Judaism. And you read in the Gospels when his disciples talk to them, when his disciples address Jesus, how do they address him?
Master.
Rabbi, sometimes master or rabbi.
Yeah. Mhm.
Rabbi, teacher in the Jewish tradition. So there's one place where someone challenges him and says, there's, I don't know, 400 something or 600 something laws of Moses. And they say, which is the greatest law? And they're trying to catch him up. I think it's the Pharisees who are always trying to catch him up. Because okay, if we can get him to say one law is more important, then he'll be busted for diminishing the value of all the other laws. So they ask him, of all the laws of Moses, what's the most important? And he says, well, there's two. I can't get it down to one, but I can get it down to two. One is, you shall love the Lord your God with all your heart and with all your mind and with all your strength. And the second is like unto the first. Very interesting. It's equivalent to the first, and that is, you will love your fellow human as yourself. Okay? Very interesting. First is love God with everything you got. Now, we've talked here before about this word love, and how people diminish the value of love by thinking, it's a feeling, it's an emotion. But love in the full dignity of that word is the discovery of intimacy, the discovery of non-separateness. The ultimate intimacy is, intimacy means closeness. Close, closer, closer, close. And the closest is when there's not two, non-duality. That's really what we were doing in that meditation. Are you there? God, nothing, whatever. It's me, Dean, whatever. And then we discover, it's me, nothing, right? We say merge, like in the Indian, Hindu vocabulary, that's called yoga. The real meaning of the word yoga, yoke, union. And it's not just union of your head with your knee. It's the union of the individual. It's me with the universal, the infinite. But it's not really union. It's discovery that there was never two. It's not two separate things that become one. It seems that way until they become one. Then you realize, there never was separateness. So that's the highest level of love. Love your God, the Lord your God, with all your heart, all your mind, all your soul. With everything you got, you find through your mind, through your heart, through your strength, you find, okay, I'm not separate from that vastness. Let's throw out another word here. And then the second is like unto the first. Love others as yourself. Not as much as that's often misunderstood. As much as you love you. No, love your fellow human as yourself. In other words, as equivalent to you. Are you there? You, it's me, right? The so-called self and the so-called other wind up being not two. And that's equivalent to finding out that the so-called individual and the so-called God are not two. My wonderful Buddhist teacher, Charles Genoux, remember him saying, everyone agrees that there's a self, but everyone disagrees about who it is. Right? Now, to me, it's very clear there's 7 billion others, 7 billion people that get the name tag, hello, I'm other. And there's one name tag that's, hello, I'm self, and it belongs to me. Right? Isn't that funny? There's only one me, and there's 7 million Use guys. Yins
Yes.
in Pittsburgh. Y'all. There's 7 billion y'all and there's one I.
We're going to change the text now. Hello, I'm nothing.
I'm nothing.
That's
Yeah, okay.
what we're going to do.
Then everyone's got the same name tag.
Right.
But the day-to-day conventional reality is everyone thinks they got the hello, I'm self name tag. It's clear to me that I'm the self, you guys are all other. Whereas Beth over there foolishly thinks that she's the self and that I'm one of the others. Right? And it's like, as Charles went on, he said, it's like here and there. It's exactly like here and there. It's obvious to me that here is here. Over there is there. Whereas, Dorothy foolishly thinks that over there where she is here. And that I'm there. But obviously I'm here. Okay? So here and there, and that's easier to see. But then if we can just entertain this possibility that self and other are just like here and there, it's just a matter of perspective. It's just a matter of perspective. So if neither here nor there is absolute, but just relative, a matter of perspective, and if possibly self and other are just like here and there, just they're not absolute, they're a matter of perspective, then what is it that's not perspective? What is the bigger, the truer truth, the deeper truth, the truer identity of both the self and the other, the here and the there, that's not relativized, that doesn't depend on perspective? That's what we're talking about. That's when we use these inadequate words like nothing. Well, nothing is non-relative. Nothing. God, spirit, infinite. Right? So when we sink into that, then we're beyond here and there. We're beyond self and other. And the more clearly we come to see that as our own identity, the more clearly we see, well, that's everyone else's identity. And then why would we ever be mean to them? This is being mean. That's like the right hand hitting the left hand. So that's, to me, that's what all this spiritual language is for. It's for helping us see that situation clearly, and to use it to persecute people, or to use it at the service of terrible politicians, because they help you with the tax breaks for your church or something. To sell your soul for that is, to me, it's just criminal. It's criminal.
The other term is the one.
Uh-huh.
And the two coming together as the one.
Right.
So
As the one. Mm-hmm.
Are you the one?
Yeah. Another lovely, completely inadequate term. Every one of these terms had all spiritual language. Any words that we use about this stuff, there's always a back door of misunderstanding. Like any of it, whether it's nothing, because nothing then sounds like void, empty, depressing, nihilistic, blah, as we've said. The one sounds like, it's interesting that they don't use that language in the ancient traditions. They don't say one, they say not two. Advaita.
Non-dual.
Non-dual.
Notice that word dual, D-U-A-L. Dual is cognate with Dvaita in Sanskrit, is duality, Dvaita. And then the prefix in Sanskrit, the letter A, is just like the prefix in English, like political, apolitical, theistic, atheistic, gnostic, meaning knowing, agnostic, not knowing, right? So, Advaita, not two, non-dual. They don't say one. when they're trying to talk about ultimate reality, they don't say one-ism, they say non-dualism. Because one still can sound like there's a thing
Number,
there.
a number,
There's
yeah.
one thing, there's a number, one as opposed to two. Right? So non-duality is, it's not two, or 3 or 4 or 5, or even 1. It's nothing, but not 0 either. It's fun.
It's-
Any other thoughts along these lines?
I was thinking about
Yeah, talk a little louder for that.
yes, about somebody who said that anytime something becomes a sacred belief,
Mm-hmm.
that's when there is the risk that we become attached and violent when we start to defend, to cherish certain concepts.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, yeah. As soon as it becomes... See, the problem is that the real thing, which is not a thing, but whatever it is that we settle into in meditation, as it gets clearer and clearer to us, it's just, it has no specific qualities. It has no edges. You can't get a handle on it. But that's subtle. It's beyond subtle. It's nothing. It's invisible. It's tasteless. It's colorless. It's like nothing. But it's what we're looking for in all the somethings. Infinitely satisfying. All the somethings are satisfying up to a point. But because they're something, they have edges. They're finite. They have finite characteristics. And because we are, what we are is this spirit, is this God, is the we have as if we have the desire to come home to ourselves. We're like an infinite whole trying to fill itself up with finite objects. Some French philosopher said, man has a God-shaped hole in his soul, and spends his life trying to fill it with other things. Right? So, because it's so beyond subtle, in trying to talk about it, you see all the difficulties we're having talking about it tonight, then, okay, let's just give it a little bit of shape. Let's give it some words, and then, or let's talk about it metaphorically. It's the most powerful thing. It's like a great king, and then soon, God is the king, and we got pictures of him, beautiful paintings of God sitting on his throne. And in fact, in throughout most of Judaism, God is the king, is the Lord of the universe. Baruch Atah Adonai. Right? Jesus comes along, and he realizes, gee, for most people, a king is, that metaphor works up to a point because you're in awe of the king. Right? And the infinite, in a way, it's worthy of awe. It's appropriate to be in awe of the infinite. But it also makes it remote. See, all these metaphors break down at a certain point. So Jesus introduces this idea, okay, we'll talk about God not as the king, but as the Father. Father's much more intimate. You live with the Father. In fact, all our accounts of the life of Jesus are in the New Testament written in Greek, which is not the language that he spoke. He spoke Aramaic. There is one word in the Gospels that he speaks that's in Aramaic. So it's the only word probably that we know with some certainty is the particular word that crossed his lips. And the word is Abba. Abba, which is Aramaic for father. Right. But then, we get into God the Father, and then that has that has an edge, it has a limitation. What about God the Mother? Etc., etc. Anything you do, it's going to help. Oh, God the Father, intimate, and the Father takes care of me, and the Father, I have my birthright through my Father, but then, then we lose all the feminine qualities, and so forth, and so on.
And then we're also eternally children.
Yes, then we're
And
children.
it keeps the whole of
Yes.
the people in that faith like the little children. Like depending on the Father
Mm-hmm.
for the blessing, for the administration
Fearful.
of what's right or wrong,
Yeah.
or forgiveness, or
And your father, your
The
parent
principles.
tells you what to do and what to
Exactly.
think, and then that gets abused into, oh, this is very useful. If I have people who are used to being told what to think, and if I tell them I'm speaking for the Father, and the Father very conveniently is telling them to donate a bunch of money to my church, and then I can tell them God's telling me that this is the politician you should support, and then that politician in turn supports me. It's just
it's
it's
basically
it's
powerless.
it's
It feeds whole populations of powerless people,
yeah.
or at least people that are subdued or
Right.
or
And on the other hand,
that.
I can point to some deeply spiritual people who are using the same metaphors. If you read the works, for instance, of Thomas Merton, a Catholic monk, deeply intellectual, deeply mystical, hung out with the Dalai Lama, comparing notes on meditation approaches and so forth, and using that same metaphor, but using it in a very, deeply positive way.
But it's one. It's Thomas Merton.
He's one guy.
Just one guy.
He's one guy. Yeah, there's more, but he's not the only one. But
it's very few.
yeah, yeah.
There
So
are more mystics, right?
yeah, mystics in the sense. I mean, that's another tricky word. Mystics in the sense of the real meaning of that word, the dictionary meaning of that word, mystical, means having to do with direct experience of the thing. But again, see, there's the back door of misunderstanding to that word. People hear that word mystic or mystical, and they start thinking about crystal balls and woo woo, like they think it means woo woo. You know what the word really, the root of that word mystic, and also mysterious, the Greek meaning, the Greek root, it means with closed eyes. With closed eyes. So, enjoy closing your eyes at home. We'll do this again in 2 weeks. May all beings swiftly realize their true nature, that which we're having trouble putting a word to. But we have no trouble experiencing it, living it. Impossible to define, lived with ease. And thus, may peace spontaneously come to prevail in this world and all possible worlds. Loka samasta sukhino bhavantu. Loka samasta sukhino bhavantu. Loka samasta sukhino bhavantu. Om Shanti Shanti Shanti.